So what is really a surprising amount of content here on installing domain controllers, in part because of that need for some foundations on what Active Directory really is, as well as its components. What have we talked about in this module? We have talked about not only those foundations, but a variety of the different click-by-click things you'll need to go through in order to get domain controllers and an Active Directory up and operational. We began with adding a domain controller and creating that brand new forest and domain, as well as a look at removing the domain controller and DC services if you need to. It's always a great idea to remove the domain controller services before removing the domain controller, or you'll end up having to go and carefully tease out all those orphan bits out of your Active Directory database. We then looked at installing domain controllers from install from media, as well as how to install ADDS on server core. A bunch of different commands that work on server core and also work on the full version of Windows Server as well. We took a look then at the extended process of upgrading not only a domain controller, but also upgrading a full Active Directory domain and or forest. That 5-step process that involves the AD prep tool that upgrades all the domain controllers, and then concludes with upgrading the domain or forest functional level. We took a look at DNS and those SRV records, as well as how to resolve some record registration issues, as well as a look also at configuring our global catalog server on any of the domain controllers we may have. And then concluded with a look here at deploying Active Directory in Microsoft Azure using the IaaS approach. Considering Microsoft's investments in Azure Active Directory Services, it's important to differentiate the VM approach from the services approach in building up that Azure Active Directory presence. Coming up next, we will continue this look at Active Directory, focusing in on the users and computers that make up our Active Directory infrastructure. We'll go through not only the click-by-click to create users and computers, not terribly an interesting function, but then go into the command line tools that we can use for automating the creation of Active Directory accounts or performing some interesting bulk Active Directory operations. We'll talk about the different user rights that can be associated with users, as well as how to manage inactive and disabled accounts. We'll take a look at naming our machines and then adding them into the Active Directory domain, and even doing offline domain joins if we have that need as well. Although working with users and computers in Active Directory might not be the most glamorous job in the world, if we have the right PowerShell command exposure, there are ways in which we can make our job that much easier. That discussion on the interesting part of managing users and computers is a topic for our next module coming up.